Have you ever wanted to live in a sci-fi future? Well, here we are. It's 2025. These 5 books take place in 2025. Okay, you guys, so let's talk about these science fiction books that take place in 2025. Now, obviously, that means that these books were written in the past, not this year, so I just want to make sure that's very clear. I also want to mention to you that I haven't read all of these books. I know it's terrible. However, to make it up to you, I'm going to give you a 6th bonus book that I think will qualify for this list. And in case you want to feel a little bit more like you're in the Twilight Zone, half of this list was written in 1972. So it turns out that that was the year to project forward into 2025. Now let's start with the 3 books that were published in 1972. The first one is called The Listeners by James Gunn. This book takes place in the Arecibo Observatory with scientists who are listening to the universal cosmos. Now remember that this took place before SETI was a thing. However, after listening for 50 years, they get a signal. And that's when the debate sparks. And that's when the characters have to answer the questions of what was the intention of the reply, how do we interpret it, and also, should we respond or not? This was the book, you guys, that inspired Carl Sagan to write the classic Contact. So, it's definitely one that's high up on my TBR. The next one is 334 by Thomas Disch. This is also a fix-up novel that focuses around an apartment complex in New York City in 2025, and the address of this complex is 334 East 11th Street. This novel really takes bits and pieces of all of the people who live within this apartment complex to show you what this dystopian 2025 would look like. We get to see a future where drugs are sanctioned, real food is only seen on display in the museum. We have a corrupt healthcare system where people have to be bribed to save people's lives, and also there is an avid black market. And so much more. Now, while this book didn't quite get it all right, and it's a beautiful, interesting glimpse into what problems that Thomas Disch thought we would have today. The next and last book written in 1972 is The Running Man by Stephen King. This book is somewhat reminiscent of the short story The Most Dangerous Game. In a dystopian 2025, we follow Ben Richards as he agrees to compete in a deadly reality TV show game where he is hunted by professional killers in front of an audience of millions. To win $1 billion, which his sick daughter desperately needs to live, he agrees to try to survive 30 days. Problem being that nobody has survived beyond 8. Taking this on and many other problems, we also have the added problem that the audience can also not just bet on the outcome, but the audience can pay money to mess with Ben Power's chances. This sounds like a story right up my alley. It almost sounds like a Squid Game or Hunger Games style story that I wasn't aware of until I started this list. So this is one that I am also very excited to read. It's kind of funny how I missed all of these books written in 1972, but don't worry, I will make up for that. Next, let's go forward a few years in the future to 1979, where John Varley wrote the book Titan. This is the first of his Gaia trilogy. This book follows Sirocco Jones and his crew as they are sent to investigate a moon of Saturn that looks very suspicious. But before they can tell anybody, their ship crash lands into the moon. And now Jones must travel through the environment and all of the cultures and civilizations that live on this moon to find the creature in charge. This is one that I did read and I absolutely recommend. Now we have to fast forward and skip a few decades into 1993 and also 1998, where Octavia Butler has written the Earthseed duology, starting with Parable of the Sower and spilling into Parable of the Talents. We have a story that starts in 2024, but does go into 2025. This story follows Lauren Olamina, who witnesses the social decay of the United States from her home in California. That leads to a brutal anarchist post-apocalyptic world. This is especially hard as she suffers from something called hyperempathy, which means she feels other people's emotions a lot more acutely than anyone else. Yet, despite all the ugliness in the world, she teaches people around her how to hope in a desperate situation and turns it into religion known as Earthseed, hence the title of the duology. This is a very dark story that is full of a thread of hope that I really enjoyed. You guys, I love me some Octavia Butler, but this is a really fantastic duology to start. If you haven't already, this year's the year. Finally, let's fast forward into 2006, where our last book is being written by Vernor Vinge, called Rainbow's End. This Hugo Award winner follows Richard Gu, who has just been cured of Alzheimer's dementia. He, at 75, is going back in a youthful body all the way to high school, where he is supposed to relearn the world. And many things he learns surprises him, including implanted Homeland Security device chips in our brains, a whole bunch of unknown war history, and even a conspiracy afoot. I was a little worried about this book, to be honest, because there were a lot of negative reviews. But there are so many interesting chunks of knowledge in this story that I thought that, despite the fact the ending was a little less than satisfactory, I would definitely recommend to read it this year in 2025. So you guys, that does it for my quick 5 books plus 1 bonus book that were set in 2025. While we're not quite as dystopian as they predicted, we're getting kind of close. So let me know in the comment section down below if you know of any other books that were set in 2025, and I hope you find an excuse to pick up one of these books. Until next time, you guys, see ya in the next video. Thank you. Bye.